Hey everyone, my name is Shanice and welcome back to my channel. Today I am here to recommend some books based on Beatles album number 8, the very famous Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It was released on May 26, 1967, and the idea germinated after the Beatles' 3-month break from touring and kind of from music. Paul McCartney had this idea of musically channeling an Edwardian musical group that took a lot of its musical inspirations from different genres. The band wanted to continue using some experimentation like they did in Revolver, and this is why we get a 13-track album mixed with some circus music, some vaudeville, some psychedelic rock, some pop, some classical Indian music. It is very much a conceptual album, and it also won the Grammy for Best Album of the Year, which was the first rock album to ever win that award. Of all the 13 songs, only one is not written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney, the duo, and that was Within You Without You, written and sung by George Harrison. This is an incredibly famous album, so I don't think I have to give too much background information on it, so I will just begin going track by track as usual and recommending a book that I think fits each song. So if a song were a book in a way. So to begin, we have the titular Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, track number 1, which is the Beatles starting off the song, the album, introducing this band. It's almost like the Beatles are performing and they interrupt their own show to introduce to the audience this Lonely Hearts Club Band. And so a book that immediately came to mind was Geek Love by Catherine Dunn. I've read this multiple times now. It is a book that's not going to be for everyone. It explores a couple that intentionally creates children with disabilities or physical ailments in order to put them in a circus, in their own circus, to make money. And so one of these children, Arturo, he gains this cult. He becomes this huge personality. He is the master of ceremonies, if you will, and a lot of his introductions in his acts mimic a bit of the attitude in this introductory song. And also you have the circus, so of course it fits the theme here. It fits the sort of hokey, performative nature of the song. Track number 2 is With a Little Help from My Friends. This one is sung by Ringo Starr, and I didn't mention that track 1 was sung mainly by Paul McCartney. So track number 2 sung by Ringo Starr. This one is such a famous song about somebody just giving props to their friends for keeping them happy, keeping them going. Just with a little help from one's friends, one can get by. So the novel that I'm going to recommend is called Agatha of Little Neon by Claire Luchette. This is about Agatha, who lives a very quiet, sheltered life with her 3 sisters. The 4 of them are inseparable. One day, because of economic issues in the town, Agatha needs to leave, and it's the first time that she's going to be separate from her sisters. And so we follow her kind of making her own way in the world, but still always getting by, not just through physical connection to her sisters, but the emotional and spiritual ties that they have to each other because of their 9 strong years living together, essentially side by side. It has Agatha learning about who she is without her sisters or her friends, but also reminding her who she is because of her sisters and her friends. Next up, track 3, one of my favorite songs on the album, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, sung primarily by John Lennon. This had to have one particular novel, really 2, as recommendations, because the song is the writing of the song is partially inspired by the surrealist, dreamlike style of the books. So I am going to recommend Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and also Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. Lots of people debate where the inspiration of this truly came from. Was it Alice's Adventures in Wonderland? Or was it that John's son Julian came up with this phrase and told his dad, and then his dad thought it was so fantastical and like a great way to start a song? Or is it just an LSD reference? Who really knows? I think all of the above can fit the song itself. Regardless, this is a superb song, and again, there's no better recommendation than Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. Track number 4 is called Getting Better. This one was mainly performed by Paul McCartney. Actually, this whole album, even though I do love it, very much is centered on Paul. You can kind of tell that he's the most into this idea of this character band, and the other Beatles are just like tagging along. But Paul is very committed here to the entire album, and so in the song we hear a singer talking about how much he has changed, how much his life is improving because of the growth that he has had. And so for this one, I am recommending Real Americans by Rachel Khong. Famously, I do not love this book. There were great elements to it, but there were others that I didn't love. However, I still do think that the growth that Nick, the character in particular, goes through from beginning to end, I think really encapsulates and captures the personal revolution and discovery that the song is referencing. And even through hardships, things do get better. Track number 5 is one of my favorites. It's called Fixing a Hole, lead vocals by Paul McCartney. This is, some people say it is a drug reference. I like to think of it more as a song about distractions and what we can do to avoid distractions, whether that's the creative life, therapy, anything, writing. So I am going to recommend The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I think one reading of Catcher in the Rye is that Holden Caulfield is speaking to a therapist or some sort of counselor, and even though he's trying to focus his ideas, he still keeps meandering into different memories, different things. And I think the song references and points out how even though we try to gain focus, like sometimes our mind will wander inevitably. And as we know, the whole novel of Catcher in the Rye is just this like stream of consciousness of this young kid who is disillusioned with the world, and thinks people are phonies. And the song itself does also mention like silly people and how they can't understand why the singer, you know, won't let them in their door. So I think there's a youthful energy to the song, and obviously Holden is a child. So yeah, I am recommending Catcher in the Rye. Track number 6 is called She's Leaving Home, sung by Paul McCartney. And for this one, I'm going to recommend Lady in the Lake by Laura Lippman, a recent read of mine. And this one, I'm kind of envisioning the main character, Maddie's ex-husband and child, Seth, singing the song, kind of wondering why Maddie is leaving them for her own independent life. It must be for something that she was lacking. There's clearly a misunderstanding, a miscommunication. They think they did nothing wrong. Obviously she disagrees. So neither side is really seeing each other. But even though they're a little angry at each other, they're still mourning the fact that this family is cracking and falling apart. So the melancholy of the song is also embedded in the novel. Track number 7 is called Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, sung by John Lennon. For this, I am picking Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. This is about Jim and William, 2 young boys who one day a traveling carnival comes to their town. They get swept up in it, and in joining the carnival, the boys learn to conquer their fears and battle the creepy Mr. Dark, who is kind of the leader of the carnival. This song follows Mr. Kite doing his tricks, pursuing his dreams, and then finally topping the bill I think with the pursuit of one's dreams, there's a lot of fear involved. And so, of course, in this novel, like I said, these two boys learn how to face their fears and survive. Then for one of the most beautiful songs on the album and one of the most beautiful Beatles songs I have heard, it's Within You, Without You, written and performed by George Harrison. The other Beatles don't actually perform on this song. George does perform it with Indian classical musicians. And so this song talks a lot about rejecting materialism and the dangers of materialism, how you can lose your soul in that, and how really lots of problems can be solved just by loving each other. It can be a little naive, but it is a beautiful message. And actually, a book that I'm going to choose for this one is called It Can't Happen Here by Sinclair Lewis. This embodies kind of the reason why a song like this exists and these messages exist, because this novel talks about a demagogue, the rise, the creation of a demagogue named Buzz, and he becomes a dictator. We follow him becoming a dictator, chasing that wealth, chasing that materialism, chasing fame and glory. And it's a stark reminder that there's more to this world than narcissism and power. It has predicted some political events, but even as a dystopian standalone, I think it's really telling and just reminds us to stay grounded. Then for track number 9, When I'm 64, sung by Paul, I'm going to recommend Olive again by Elizabeth Strout. This is the follow-up to Olive Kitteridge, which won the Pulitzer. And again, this is more a collection of interlinked short stories than a traditional novel. And we follow Olive getting older, but also chronicling her townspeople's experience. And yes, it does talk about aging and just figuring out what to do in your old age and what your passions are, how they change, dealing with loss. Of course, this song is much funnier in tone, but this does have its own brand of kind of dark humor. It's very observational and very smart. And even book 1 would fit with this song too, because Olive, we meet her when she's a little bit older. So yeah, it has a very breezy, kind of accessible language, which of course the song also features. Next up for track number 10, another one of my favorite songs, Lovely Rita, mainly sung by Paul. For this, I am going to recommend Educating Rita, which is actually a play written by Willie Russell. And in fact, the main character, who initially starts calling herself Rita, is from Liverpool, which is appropriate here. And she enrolls in open English classes at a university, and there she falls in love with an instructor. And we see her get educated and learn how to formulate her ideas and learn about who she is and what she loves, and learn about her own intelligence and worth. It's a social documentary. It's really funny. I think the song has its own sense of humor. It's boisterous, it's confident, and yeah, we see Rita gain her confidence by the end. Then for track number 11, Good Morning, sung by John Lennon, I am recommending There's No Such Thing as an Easy Job by Kikuko Tsumura, and this was translated from Japanese to English by Polly Barton. In short, the song and the novel are about wanting nonconformity but feeling forced to live within a very conformist world, the struggles of a job that you don't like and don't want to go to. I relate, just the whiplash of sadness and happiness in everyday life. Of satisfaction and disappointment, all wrapped into one very crazy life. So if you like books about the maladies of capitalism, this is the book for you. So the penultimate song, track number 12, is actually a reprise of the first song, the titular song, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, just sped up with a few different lyrics and of course a little bit of a different instrumentation, and this time all four Beatles sing along. So for this I am recommending the final revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie Walton. This is a fictional account of an interracial rock band that shoots to a meteoric rise in music. They kind of break up and then they choose to go on tour again for a revival. Along the way we learn a lot about their dark secrets and the truths about their relationship, but I thought this fit really well with this song, mainly because of the revival aspect of it all, of coming back, of kind of saying goodbye in coming back, and of sad but necessary endings. And of course, lastly, we get one of the best songs of all time, A Day in the Life. This was sung by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. And this has an epicness to it, almost an end of the world vibe, a return to normalcy from the previous 12 tracks. The Sgt. Pepper band has now left and the Beatles are back, and it's like a sharp return to kind of the sadness of everyday life. Observational, the song itself was written inspired by newspaper stories that John Lennon read. It's kind of like a collage of real life scenes. And so I'm recommending Steppenwolf by Hermann Hesse. This is about Harry Haller, who is very sad, very lonely, and very discontented. He struggles to fit in, to understand the world, because he despises the bourgeois values, and he's pretty much alone until he meets Hermione. It's been translated as Hermione in some books, in some versions, but he meets a woman, he falls in love with her, and his life changes from there. So there is a glimmer of hope even in existentialism and doubt. So yeah, I'm choosing Steppenwolf to close off this book recommendations video. What an album, honestly. It really revolutionized the albums as a unit, the designs of the covers, of the album artwork itself, of performance, ironically, even though the band was not touring during this time. But yeah, just a remarkable album and a very fun and musically diverse album. So yeah, thank you so much for continuing with me in this series where I recommend books based on every song, on every Beatles album. Can't wait for the next one. Enjoy your week, and I will see you next time. Bye.